All right, so this is what we'll be doing. Okay, now that we're all good to go, here we go. So, yeah, jumping on at a middle of the afternoon, and if you've been following along, this is the one for today. Is Genesis 8 through 11. We're working our way through the Bible, and you see I cross them off as we have done them. So if you've missed one, they're either going to be on YouTube or on Twitch, and you can go back and find those and watch what we've done. If you're on Twitch, you can watch the whole thing. If you're on YouTube, it'll just be the edited version of those. So, anyway, did Matthew 5 through 7 this morning to get made up for missing that yesterday. And see, just that's an encouragement, I hope, to all of you. If you miss one, when you have time and space, just go do that one. And no hurry. In fact, if you want to do this there on a slower basis and you're going to do 3 of these a week, yeah, just they'll be here. Come back later, watch them when you have time. Do a binge if you want. You might have to do that on your own if you wanted to binge through Genesis or something later on, and you missed Genesis, then you could choose to do that. But we're going to maybe I'll work on putting that together at a later date when we're down the road. We get through all of Genesis. Maybe I'll put a Genesis podcast playlist together. Playlist, that's what I was thinking of. But we're in Genesis 8, and so if you remember when we last left our hero, Noah has been working on the ark. Noah was the only one who was upright in the midst of an evil generation. And as I had mentioned, if you didn't catch that, there is the Noah movie, and you might read through this and go, what in the world are those rock creatures, the Watchers? What in the world are some of the other things that are happening? That is information that comes from the book of Enoch, and maybe you're not familiar with it. It is referenced in, I'm trying to think, is it Jude? Or, yeah, I think it's First Peter, or sorry, I think Peter references it, and so does Jude. And so there's some references to it. So the biblical authors were familiar with that. And so that does give some background. I'm not going to go into it. Some of that stuff is, well, it's not scripture, so it's not taken to be with the same inspired view, but it is background information, which is beneficial to helping to understand the culture to which Genesis would have been written and given out to. So while we're getting started here, just going to give a shout out to Full Circle Beans. I don't drink coffee in the morning. I drink tea, and but it's afternoon. I've only recently, since helping Full Circle Beans bring beans back from Guatemala, roast them in Iowa, and sell them, it's the first I've really started drinking coffee. I'll probably do a video on that some other time, but just a shout out to them. And so, yeah, morning, drink my tea. Afternoon, drink my coffee. Evening, well, who knows? We'll see. All right, but we're in Genesis 8, and Noah is working on the ark. So let's read. Oh, that's right. The floods already came, didn't they? Yes. So Noah is in the ark with all the animals. That's where we're at. Now God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed, and the rain had stopped falling from the sky. The waters receded steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the water had gone down. And on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. Okay, so some geography in there, but I just pause a minute to think about this. If you are in the group that believes that Noah's flood is a worldwide flood, then riddle me this. Riddle me this. How can we make any estimations about what geography existed prior to the flood? I mean, there are 4 rivers mentioned. Should we think that Noah, if he took off from the same location, rested in the same location at the end, he was able to float around the world for all of this and come back to the same spot? Certainly, God could do that. But even so, why would we make the assumption that the Tigris, Euphrates, and the Nissan and the Pison, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, all of the other rivers returned exactly to where they were? I just got to think that if the world is flooded, that some of those are going to move, that other things are going to happen. So I think trying to figure out geographically where the Garden of Eden was is a fool's errand, because anything prior to the flood wouldn't have that kind of understanding. Now, if you're in the boat that says, the boat, you're in the boat that says, oh no, it was just a regional flood, and I think you can make an argument from Scripture for that to a degree, because there are times where it says all the world, and it's referring to all the known world. So I'll give you, where it says Caesar Augustus said all the world should be taxed. Well, we understand that wasn't taxing the North America, it wasn't taxing China, it wasn't taxing India. We understand it means all the known world. So there are other times where it can also have that implication. We don't have to make the assumption of it being the whole world. I do think it is, because I think I mentioned last time, why would animals need to be rescued if it's a regional flood? Animals can just split, run away. They're smart enough to run away from tsunamis and floods and other things, and they're better at it than humans. So, and why would it take 150 days for the water to recede in a regional flood? That seems excessive. Anyway, so the waters are receding. I like how it says, and God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were in the ark. Doesn't forget about him. I mean, he put him in the boat, so obviously he wouldn't forget. But it's the not remembered, oh, he forgot, now he remembered. It's the he took notice of him, and he did something towards him. He's doing that. So now, okay, so I've done this before. I'm not going to do it now. Adding up all the days to figure out how long it is. It's somewhere around a year. If you add up the days of the rain, the days of the circling around, the days of the flood receding, the days of the opening the window here and going forward, you can add those all up and figure out how long he was in the ark. Close to a year. Somewhere between 10 months and 13 months or something like that, depending on how you count them. So after 40 days, Noah opened a window he had made in the ark. Also, the number 40 is a symbolic number, so I also don't think you have to automatically assume 40 is literal in any of this. It could have been 39. It could have, remember, part of a day could be a day. It could be 30, and number 40 is used symbolically here to talk about the completeness and utterness of the rain. So that aside, we'll keep going. After 40 days, Noah opened a window he had made in the ark, and he sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could find nowhere to perch, because there was water over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand, and he took the dove, and he brought it back to himself in the ark. He waited 7 more days, and again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him, in the evening there was in its beak was a fresh plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. He waited 7 more days and he sent out the dove again, but this time it did not return to him. Now, what's a little unclear to me is, does the raven disappear the first time? Or when it says it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up on the earth, is that like he did with the dove? He sent it out, it came back. He waited a week, he sent it out, it came back. Is that a summary statement, or is that an individual event statement? I'm not clear on that. So I just want to point that out. Sometimes it can be unclear of exactly everything that's going on, if it's a summary or an individual event. Nonetheless, the raven first is able to find dry ground. Then the dove isn't. Then the dove is, and then the dove doesn't return. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark." Okay, I'm going to just make a comparison here. Remember, we've been looking at Joshua, and Joshua gets instructions from God to go against Jericho. He does exactly what the instructions are. He doesn't get instructions from God initially when he goes up against Ai. What happens when he goes up against Ai? He gets defeated. Then he gets instructions from God, and then he's successful. So Noah here is doing some things, but notice we haven't had instructions from God on things. He's just been, well, to use the analogy, he's been sending out spies. He sent out a spy that was a raven. He sent out a spy that was a dove, and they've come back and given him information, or they didn't come back and gave him information, and so there we go. So he sent out 2 spies into the land. Bet you never thought of that comparison, but this is what you get when you're reading in different places in Scripture at the same time. You get different things that pop into your mind that help you make connections between things. So now God gives him in further instructions. Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it. So Noah came out together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives. All the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground and all the birds, everything that moved on the land, came out of the ark, one kind after another. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, taking some of all of the clean animals and clean birds. He sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." Now notice it says, as long as the earth endures. Interesting. All these things will happen as long as the earth endures. But notice, every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. He's not going to curse the ground because of humans again. So it has been cursed a couple of times, and it's not going to have further curse than it has to this point. Noah builds an altar, and one of the reasons why there was more clean animals than of the unclean is because clean animals are used for sacrifice. So therefore now Noah is able to build a sacrifice, or give a sacrifice on the altar that he builds, and when he does that, it's a pleasing aroma to God. In comparison, we had Cain and Abel's, where Abel's was pleasing to God, Cain's was not. Now we have Noah, who has an offering that's pleasing to God. I was going to say something. Oh yeah, the animals going out here, and I think I mentioned it before. I'll just mention it again. After their kind, we only need 2 dogs leaving the ark to get every kind of dog, every breed of dog. See, kind is different. A dog is a kind. Chihuahua is a breed, which would be under the, what, I don't know my science that well, kingdom, phylum, genus, species, whatever it is. You follow that down the order and kind, and so yeah, cats, you only need two. Dogs, you only need two. Horses, you only need two. On and on and on. I would say camels, you only need two, but I don't know if single and double are of the same. I'm going to guess they are. So you only need to have two. All right. Okay, so we're now chapter 9. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth." This should be a reflection back to Genesis earlier, to Adam and Eve. Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. It should be ringing that God is reestablishing that role for humankind, to be the ambassadors over all of creation. It's a reinstatement of that after the cleansing of the creation through the floodwaters. The fear and the dread of you will fall on all beasts of the earth, and on all the birds of the sky, on every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish of the sea that are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you, just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. Okay, I'm not certain on 100% of everything that's implied here. I do have a good idea of some of it. Partly, the fear of mankind is now going to be put in animals. The implication would be that animals didn't fear humans before this. Now, it doesn't say, I don't think, if I go back, or we just went back through, that there's specifically any fear of humans in animals, instinct, if you will, towards that or not. It's just not clear. So is this a reinstatement of what already was? Or is this an increase of what already was? Or is this something new? So we've kind of got three choices. But it says, the fear and dread of you will fall on all beasts and all the birds, on every creature that moves on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. So is this an increase in that some of them had it, not all of them did? Is it there was some fear? Now dread will also, not just fear, but dread. So there's an increase of that way. Or is this brand new? I think all those are possible. Everything that moves will be food for you. Just as I gave you green plants, I now give you everything. So does that mean that everyone was a vegetarian prior to the flood? Well, I'm going to say I don't think so, because if you're killing a lamb to make a sacrifice or any other clean animal, it would be wasteful for that food to just be discarded. Yes, you can do as a burnt offering, and regards to that, burn it up and the fat and some of that. If we get into Leviticus later, you'll see the practice and the instructions on that. They're not given here, so there could have been different methodology. Nonetheless, what we can say clearly, hey, how you doing, Lift? Good for dropping in here. Good to see you. Just going through Genesis. So we've just jumped off of the flood and looking at what God's instructions are following that. Hope you're having a good day. So everything that moves about, we're on verse 3, will be food for you. Sorry about that. I did not have my... Is there any record of sacrifice being made before this? Well, there is the sacrifices with Cain and Abel, so I don't know if that's what you're saying. Yeah, Adam and Eve's sons, if that's what you're referring to. So, yes, there is. There's not specific instructions that are laid out as to those sacrifices. We also have, before Leviticus, we do have Melchizedek and Abraham doing sacrifice. That's looking forward, though, so that's not really where we're at here. So, but there is the possibility here. It says, "I give you every green plant," or sorry, just as I gave you every green plant, now I give you everything. So there could have been animals from sacrifices that were permissible to eat. Now that could be expanded, perhaps. Or it could be, yeah, that you were supposed to sacrifice and burnt offering the entire animal, so there was nothing left. It was all devoted to God and the full sacrifice. Now there's permission to eat it. It could be either of those possible options. There's probably other ways to think about it too. Uh, but notice it's now everything. Uh, it doesn't mean that we need to run out and eat every kind of thing. It's just notice the difference between this everything and later the uh, Abrahamic or not Abraham the laws that Moses has about the dietary restrictions and things of that nature. But there is a few instructions here with this. So, but you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. And for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal and from every human being too. I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being. Whoever sheds human blood, by human shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind. So prior to this, it's not to say that there was no declaration that said that killing was wrong. We certainly have God calling into account Cain after he warned Cain and then punishment for Cain. However, now what we have is a declaration of punishment for shedding of blood is the shedding of blood, which would be legal in nature. So we have that establishment that we don't see necessarily established prior to this. As for you, now he's talking to Moses, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase upon it. Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of the flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. As I've mentioned, I think that some of the language here has a clear implication that it's a worldwide flood. Now, you can agree or disagree with that for various reasons, but I think the implication in the writing here is a thought that it was a worldwide flood, an understanding that it was a worldwide flood and not just regional. But let's keep going. God said, this is a sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Okay, I just want to pause there. The covenant isn't just between humans and God. He's talking about all living creatures. And here, when he's declaring what the covenant is, it's between God and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the cloud, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, this is a sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on earth. What's interesting in some regards is covenant, usually we think of there's two parties involved with this, and that both sides have things that they are to uphold. So what does the earth and creatures and humankind need to uphold in this covenant? I mean, we know what God is saying. God is saying, I'm going to establish a covenant, and the whole earth isn't going to be destroyed with water ever again. I'm not going to destroy all life with a flood. Again, I'm not going to destroy the whole earth with water. Again, this is the sign of it. So every time you see it, I remember. Every time you see it, you remember this covenant has been made. If we go back and look through here, I will establish my covenant. Never again will I destroy earth. This is the sign of it. I have set this. Where's the part that people, animals, the earth is supposed to do? It's not listed here. Now, we could make the assumption that says, well, what caused the destruction was sin. Even so, if the sin would be the side that we are obligated to not do, so that this doesn't happen, God's promise is that it won't happen, and with the covenant, even if one party breaks it, the other is still obligated to it. So even if we broke it, God has made the promise it won't happen. So even if sin was the side we were supposed to, which I don't see it laid out here. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't make a case for it. I'm just saying I don't see it spelled out that way. I only see this as a one-sided covenant. Here's my promise to you. I'm going to say it's a covenant. That way, I'm bound to it forever. And I'm bound to every living thing that came off of it. I'm bound to all of humankind. I'm bound to it for the earth as well. Now, you could make an argument that part of what it was supposed to be, that would be our part, would be when he says, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase upon it. We could also say, well, whoever said human blood, this is, but, and then we're in the image of God. We could pull those in, but those are stated before I now establish my covenant. So we could include them. We don't have to. It's not necessary to think that those are included in this covenant. So we'll keep going. The sons of Noah who came out from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backwards and covered their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from the wine and found out what his youngest had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves, and will he be to his brothers?" And he also said, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem. And may Canaan be the slaves of Japheth." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Noah lived a total of 950 years, and then he died. So there's a bunch happening in here. One of the things I had looked at is, or I've seen, I didn't look at, this word for nakedness and what it's referring to could mean more than simple, he had no clothes on. Now we have the description of his brothers walking in backward to do that, but there's also this thought of uncovering oneself, or nakedness is also at times referred to in regards to one's spouse or other activities of procreation. And so there is a possibility that what is actually being described here in less than graphic way is that Ham slept with Noah's wife, which would be his mother. There is that possible interpretation of this. I'm not going to go into details, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. If you're interested, you can go and find more information on
where this word is used and how it's used, and that gets a little above my head to be able to fully explain all of that. But I just wanted to bring it up because when you get into some of this Old Testament stuff, you hear things and you go, "Is that true? Is that possible?" Um, and we don't know and understand all the cultural relevance of things. So I only bring that up not to cause controversy or to say, "Oh, wow, that's just weird and bizarre." Uh, it's to help you to be able to say when you hear things, don't just automatically react that that can't be biblical. React with, let me investigate that and find out further and come to any conclusion based on what Scripture has to say, based on the evidence that people are bringing in the argument. I don't think it makes uh, the the reality of the what happens or the curse on Canaan to be greater or lesser depending upon what it was. I don't think so. I do think that this passage and this section here, if you ever wonder, well, how did the argument or the idea of slavery in the South get used? Well, it was here and saying that the descendants of Canaan were those who were in Africa. And so then, therefore, we can make them slaves because the Bible tells us that we can. Well, that is not what is saying here or what we should do. So another thing to look at here, if you hear that or see that, that you can look at and go, wow, I don't see that from the text. It says there, you have to be and you're going to be, and that continues forever. Also, that has real problems with bringing the New Testament in and this too. So anyway, not what the point of that was, but just to point that out. So now we're going into Genesis 10. This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. So we're going to get genealogy again. And I'm just going to pull this up because I find it fascinating. So we're Genesis 10. These are the generations of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So I'm just going to look up theirs, but you can look up more names later. So let's look up what Noah means. We might have done that already. I'll do it again. Here's Shem. Here's Ham. Here's Japheth. I don't know if we did this last time or not. I know I've looked up some names previously. Noah means rest. Oh, that's interesting. Shem means name. My name is name. That's cool. Ham means hot. And Japheth means opened. So, name, hot, and opened. That is my three sons of the Old Testament here. So, okay, let's get back to our reading then. Again, you just go to Blue Letter Bible, like I was just showing, and you can click on it. You can look up each name. It's kind of interesting, but there's too many for us to do that in our time together. So, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Medea, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarma. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, the Kivites, and the Rodanites. From these, the maritime people spread out into their territories by their clans within their nation, each with its own language. Oh, that's interesting. Each with its own language is mentioned here. Is this just intended to be foreshadowing? Maybe, maybe. Uh, the sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. So here we have Cush, which would be Africa, Egypt, which would be Africa, Put. I don't remember where Put is, and Canaan. Now the sons of Cush, Sheba, Queen of Sheba, should possibly come to mind. Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabteka. And the sons of Rama are Sheba and Deben, and Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. This is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh in Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Kala, and Resen, which is between Nineveh and Kala, which is a great city. Egypt was the father of the Ludites, Ammonites, Lehabites, Naphtuhites, Pathrusites, Lahites, from whom the Philistines came, and Kaphtorites. Canaan was the father of Sidon, his firstborn, and of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgasites, Hivites, Arkites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. Later, the Canaanite clans scattered, and the borders of Canaan reached from Sidon toward Geraz as far as Gaza, and then toward Sodom, Gomorrah, Adham, and Zebarim as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham by the clans and language in their territories and nations. Fun stuff here, people. More names to come. Sons were also born to Shem, whose older brother was Japheth. Japheth was the ancestor of all sons of Eber. The sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Meshech. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah the father of Eber. And two sons were born to Eber. One named Peleg, because in his time the earth was divided. His brother was named Joktan. Joktan was the father of Almadad, Sheleth, Hazarmaveth, Jeru, Hadoram, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Abamiel, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. These are the sons of Joktan. The region where they lived stretched from Mesha toward Sephir in the eastern hill country. These are the sons of Shem by the clans and languages in their territories and nations. These are the clans of Noah's sons, according to the lines of descendants within their nations. From these, the nations spread out over the earth after the flood. Wow, that is a lot. And I'm sure if I had time, I could go find a good map that would map out all of those. Some of those names I only remember or pronounce or come to whenever I read this passage. They're not familiar. I don't remember. I go away. I look at them. I come back the next time. I don't remember again. So they're informational. They're beneficial, but they're not something that I can apply to daily living. Therefore, that's why I don't spend as much time on them as maybe some other passages in Scripture. Point being, there is a whole table of nations that's given there. Now, the whole world had one language and one common speech. That sounds contrary to what was just said above. What was said above was foreshadowing. It was going through. It was. This is where at times we can see that it's not intended to be a strict chronological progression. If you're going through a genealogy from here to here, you don't list all the events in that genealogy. You're going from here to here. So you're doing a big. Now we're going back to here. And we're not doing all of it. We're just coming back to the beginning and starting from there and moving forward. So now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." The point of what they were supposed to be doing was fill the earth and subdue it. What are they saying they want to do? They want to build the biggest city and the biggest tower anyone's ever seen. We want everyone to know who we are. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. This is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. So we have them trying to glorify themselves instead of glorifying God. God evaluates what they are doing. And in order to prevent them from doing more evil and being more wicked and more self aggrandizing, he has a solution so that he can keep his covenant that he just made in regards to not destroying the world again with water. So, what's he do? He confuses the languages. And then Babel would be a connection with that understanding of confusing of languages. This is the account of Shem's family line. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100, he became the father of Arpazad. I don't know if I said the way I said it before earlier or not, but it's what happens when you don't see these names very often. And after he became the father of Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years, and he had sons and daughters. When Arphaxad had lived 35 years, he became the father of Shelah. And after he became the father of Shelah, Arphaxad lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah was 30 years old, he became the father of Eber. And after he became the father of Eber, Shelah lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When had lived 34 years, he became the father of Peleg. And after he became the father of Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg lived 30 years, he became the father of Reu. And after he became the father of Reu, Peleg lived 209 years and had other sons and daughters. When Reu had lived 32 years, he became the father of Serug. And after he became the father of Serug, Reu lived 207 years and had other sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 30 years, he became the father of Nahor. And after he became the father of Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he became the father of Terah. And after he became the father of Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and had other sons and daughters. When Terah had lived 70 years, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. This is the account of Terah's family line. Okay, so all of this, we had the genealogies of all three sons. Now we're going to focus on the genealogy of one because we're leading to and getting to Abram, who becomes Abraham. And so there's where we're going and leading towards. And the interesting thing here is look at the ages of when they became a father: 35, 30, 34, 30, 32, 30, 29, 70. 70. We all of a sudden had a jump. And if we're foreshadowing, looking ahead, uh, we know Abraham is quite old when he has a child as well. So his own birth to his father, who was 70, can point to the confidence he should be able to have in God, who can have or allow him to have a child in his old age as well. So maybe it's not something you've seen or heard before, but there is that right there. You also notice that the ages get reduced going forward here um, as we go through time and generations away from the flood. Okay, so Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans in the land of his birth. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran and the father of both Milcah and Ishkah. Now Sarai was childless because she was not able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years. He died in Haran. Okay, now I know it sounds like I'm saying the same. You have Haran with one R and Haran, the location with two R's. So just pointing that out. There's the person Haran, and there is the place Haran. Uh, Probably could do a better job of enunciating those, or saying Haran for the name of the person and Haran for the double R there. But I'm sorry if I slur my words and don't stop to enunciate every syllable. They'll sound the same when I don't. One thing interesting here that maybe you've not seen before. Look, Terah took Abram, Lot, Haran, and Sarai, and they left Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan, and they settle in Haran. So we think about Abraham, Sarai, being called to go to Canaan. But look, his father is already set out on this journey, and he just continues that journey. I also want to point out where it says Ur of the Chaldeans. I don't have a map here. Let me just look real quick if I can find one. I know I have good maps in a book, but let me see if I can find images. Okay. Yeah, this is probably not going to be what I want. Okay, yeah, I know where I have a good map, but I don't have it in front of me. I didn't, like I said, I don't sit here and plan all of this out ahead of time and so that I have what I'm looking for. Okay, well, this one, hopefully you can see right here, it shows, oh, am I not showing that on the, yeah, well, I'm not saying it shows it. If you're looking at this, right where the little arrow is in the lower right-hand corner, it's pointing at Ur. That is what some people think is where Abram is at, Ur. Well, no, he's supposed to be at Haran. Look way up at the top. Here's where Haran is. Up at the top in the center. That's where Haran is. Also, if you see where it says Ararat up at the top, that would have been where the Chaldeans are. Simply because there is a city in Babylonia named Ur doesn't mean it's Ur of the Chaldeans. Ur of the Chaldeans is also thought to be up near Ararat. So if you see Ur down here by Sumer in Babylonia used, I don't think that's accurate because it says Ur of the Chaldeans. That's not Ur of the Chaldeans. That's a different Ur, which is why they point out in our text that it is Ur of the Chaldeans that we should be considering where he's at. And the other way, he's already on his way to Canaan when his father is leading him, and they stop at Haran. You'll notice the map had the singular spelling, not the double spelling. I could look this up later, double check that. But um, anyway, all of that to say, looking ahead when we start looking at Abram, there are people who say, look at Abram was disobedient and he didn't go straight to Canaan. Well, okay, that doesn't follow and make sense because if you're thinking where Ur really is in Ur of the Chaldeans, it's farther north than in Babylonia. The other thing is you wouldn't set out across the desert anyway. You would follow the river, so you would end up going north and making a big arc to get there. That would be how you would do it. Think about how ships traveled between North America and Europe when that was how you sailed, was on a ship with the wind. You followed the trade winds. So you didn't go straight in the middle of the ocean. You took a northerly route and followed the trade winds. Uh, so just to say you didn't go straight from point A to point B is an illogical thought. I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I'm just kind of prepping for what's ahead and what's to come next week when we look at this text of Abram. But needless to say, there are. If I were to go from Michigan, where I live, and I'm going to go to New York City, I can choose to stay in the United States and go down below Lake Erie and travel on my way over. Or I could choose to go a shorter route and travel through Canada in order to get there. Would I be being disobedient if I chose one route over the other in my travels? No, I would be making a decision about what is the best and easiest and most prudent route to get there. So if in fact where lots of people think it is, near Sumer in Babylonia, which to me doesn't make sense, because the Bible makes a point of saying it's Ur of the Chaldeans, not Ur of Babylonia. Needless to say, even so, if it was there and he goes north and he follows the Euphrates River or the Tigris River north on his journey to get to Canaan, that would just be a wise choice, not a disobedient choice. So, anyway, like I said, I'm foreshadowing. I'm ahead of the game in regards to it, but just taking the time here to point that out. So, all right, that's what we have.